All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another RDU Buzz where you go over all things real estate, recreation, restaurants in the Raleigh and Durham area. I hope you all have had a good week so far. Make sure to put in the comments where you're joining from. One, it's interesting. And two, it just helps us as we prepare content on a weekly basis to know where the majority of folks are joining from. Tonight, we're going to be covering mainly some housing data. We're going to look back at the month of March. March is when I start getting really excited about, I kind of get excited about housing data all the time, but in March, it's specifically when it starts getting more exciting for me, because that's when you really start to see kind of the trends develop in the market. How competitive is the year going to be? What is what are the trends of inventory, new listings, those kinds of things. And so we're going to be walking through all of that. We're going to start with the entire region, and then we're going to kind of break it down by city and town, and look at some of the other areas in the region as well. I got a couple of local news stories. We'll end it with at the very end. Also, before we get started into the housing data, we just went through peak pollen season here. And, it lasts like a week, 2 weeks, basically. And folks always ask, how bad is the pollen? And my response is typically as bad as you can imagine, and then it's worse than whatever you just imagined. And it truly is. Like, it gets to a point during that peak season where it's almost like a dusting of snow on the road, except it's a dusting of pollen, and you can literally see the tire tracks on the road. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So anyway, I just figured I'd throw that out there because a lot of folks who are interested in the area, one of their main questions is, what about pollen season? And it is bad. It is very bad. But it ends quickly. It's already practically over. So anyway, all right, getting into the housing data, I'm going to pull up my screen here and share it. So we're going to start with MLS wide. So MLS wide is basically our entire region, but honestly, we're talking a substantial amount of geographic area here. So areas that we don't even cover because we live so far away from them. So this isn't like the best picture, and which is why we're going to break it down. You're going to talk about Cary, we're going to talk about Raleigh, we're going to talk about Durham. But a couple things to look at here. First is inventory, which is measured by how many homes are actively for sale in our region. If you look at March, we have almost 9,000 homes for sale currently. That's up 42% from this same time last year, which is crazy. And a really good thing, by the way. That's a fantastic thing. Now, when you're comparing that to pre-pandemic levels, if you go back to March of 2019, there were 97 homes for sale. So we're roughly 1,000 homes off from being at pre-pandemic levels for our region. That is obviously where we should want to be, in a market where inventory is much more stable than it has been over the last several years. And we're getting there. We're getting there. And I think there's a decent chance we reach that point this year with the way that the trends are showing. So what about new listings? So new listings is obviously how many listings are hitting the market on any given month. So in March, we had 5,000 homes hit the market, which brings us, it brings us above at any point where we were last year. So the peak of last year was May 2024. March, MLS wide, has pushed us beyond that, which is a really good thing. So new listings are up 20%. Because inventory is one thing. New listings is obviously another thing. So what's happening in our market? One of the reasons inventory is building is the fact that undesirable homes are sitting on the market longer. So just because you have more homes on the market doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have more desirable options for you. So obviously, more inventory is a good thing. That's more choices for buyers, but you also want new listings to be healthy as well. You want that constant refresh of what's being put onto the market. And so far this year, new listings looks good as well as inventory. So what about competition? So March is kind of like the first month that you really start to see how competitive the market is in the data, because obviously when you're looking, and I know I'm filming this obviously this is April. Housing data lags, right? So it lags at least typically a month. So even though we're in April, we're looking at March data. But March closings are February's contracts. And so February is kind of that first month you start to really feel some of that competition hitting the market. So in general, it was a decently competitive environment. This number right here, 98%, basically is saying sellers were getting 98% of what they were asking for their home. So in other words, they were getting buyers MLS wide, we're getting about 2% off of list prices is what that's saying. So there was actually a comment. And by the way, if you have comments, drop them below, and we'll address them next week. But there was a comment last week that was pretty interesting. There was it was a builder rep, a local builder rep, a local builder sales agent, who was talking about how slow it was and how much inventory they had on the market. And this is really fascinating, because that is something that we talked about on the last podcast, is how new construction inventory nationwide is building. But if you look at it in our area, right? So this is just new construction in our region. In March, we had 3,800, a little over 3,800 new construction homes for sale on the market. But if you compare that to March of 2019, pre-pandemic level, or pre-pandemic time, we also had 3,800 new construction homes for sale on the market. So new construction is now region-wide at pre-pandemic levels of inventory, which is a really good thing. And this is why you can go to new construction and typically get really good incentives, typically have your choice in what you get as far as maybe the lot you want, the floor plan you want, and get various incentives in order to purchase that. So this is exactly why, because the inventory has increased so much that builders are having to offer incentives in order to move that inventory. So and it's just another reason why, when especially when I talk to first time home buyers who don't want to deal with competition, right? It's one of the reasons why I bring up things like new construction, because you can enter the new construction market right now and not have to deal with competition. You get incentives, maybe you get a better rate, whatever it is. It's just it's a really good time right now to buy new construction if you don't want to deal with some of the competition that's on the resale side. All right, so that is MLS wide. So let's break it down by area. Let's look at we'll look at Cary first. All right, so let's go to all construction types. There we go. Yeah, there are not 40 homes for sale. There are more homes for sale than 40. All right, so looking at Cary, homes for sale, 256 homes for sale in March of this year. That is a 75% increase from March of last year. That's unbelievable. If you look just at resale, that's nearly 100% increase from where we were the same time last year. Incredible. All right, so, but here's the catch with Cary, right? When you compare it to pre-pandemic levels, you go back to March of 2019, there were 487 homes for sale. So we're nowhere near in Cary pre-pandemic levels of inventory. I mean, that's double where we are today, roughly double. So Cary's got a long way to go when it comes to inventory levels. When you look at new listings are healthy. They're up 19%. Resale 17% of new listings. So now what about competition in Cary? So the average seller, or the median seller, I should say, is getting right at 100%, 99.5%. So let's say just they're getting asking price, right? So the average seller in Cary is getting asking price for their home. And again, this is a higher number than we just saw MLS wide. And the reason for that at the end of the day is inventory levels. If inventory is low, you're just going to end up with more competition at the end of the day. If you look at resale, it's 100% flat. So obviously, including new construction, 99.5, and you pull new construction out, and you look just at resale, and you're at 100%. So the average seller in Cary is getting exactly what they're asking for with the house, which tells you that market is competitive. All right, let's look at Raleigh. All right. I hope y'all get as I mean, that's a ridiculous. I was gonna say I hope y'all get as excited about this as I do, which is a ridiculous thing to say. Cindy does not get excited about this. If Cindy was on here right now, she would be literally bored out of her mind. She just does not enjoy this whatsoever. I love it, but all right, so let's look at Raleigh. How many homes are for sale? So what are the inventory levels in Raleigh? Raleigh is up. Well, this is resale. Raleigh's up 61% in resale, 51% across resale and new construction. So regardless of how you look at that, the inventory in Raleigh is up substantially compared to where it was last year. Now, comparing this to pre-pandemic levels. So let's go back to March of 2019. Currently, there are almost 1,500 homes for sale in Raleigh. In March of 2019, there were 1,750 homes for sale. So we're not far off. We're 300 homes away from that. So that's pretty stinking close. Raleigh's getting really close to equaling where it was pre-pandemic levels of inventory. New listings are up 20%. In Raleigh, that's good. Now, coming down to the competition side of things, how competitive is it in Raleigh? Raleigh's a little less competitive than it was in Cary, not substantially, but a little bit less. So 98.4%. In other words, buyers are getting about 1.5% off of list price across the board. And again, you're going to have homes in Raleigh that are just going to be so competitive and go way over asking price. And then you're going to have other homes that aren't. And so, when you get that kind of number, like a 98.5%, if you are buying in Raleigh, you should know like every situation is different, right? You're going to have situations that are hyper competitive. You're going to have situations that are not competitive. And that's just kind of the reality of the market right now. One thing we are seeing, and I call it kind of like the tale of two markets, right? You have the market right now that it is a home that does not need a lot of cosmetic work or updates. So let's just say cosmetically, it's a really nice house. It's in a really nice area. It's priced well. That home is going to fly right now. And then you have the house that needs a little bit of work or maybe a lot of work. Maybe it's priced a little too high, whatever the reason is. Maybe it's not in an ideal area. Maybe it backs up to a road or something like that, right? That house is typically going to sit for a while. And so we really kind of have two markets going on right now, one where homes are flying and one where homes are sitting. And that's why you end up having this inventory that's building and building and building. But anyway, that's kind of a side note. So, all right, that is Raleigh. Let's look at Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill is another really competitive area. So, all right, homes for sale in Chapel Hill. So inventory is up 36% in Chapel Hill, 39% if you just look at resale. And new listing, well, let's compare it first to pre-pandemic levels. So this is another area that's really struggling when it comes to like pre-pandemic levels of inventory. March of 2019, 515 homes for sale in Chapel Hill. March 2025, 216. Way off. We're way off pre-pandemic levels in Chapel Hill. And that is reflected in the competition. So now you look at this number and you're like, well, this is pretty similar to what Raleigh was. But if you were to do 27, 27514. Yep, there we go. 27514. It's kind of like a Raleigh or a Chapel Hill proper zip code. Competition is really intense. 100% of list price is what you're seeing. So there are different parts of Chapel Hill that in general are going to have different levels of competition, but kind of that heart of Chapel Hill, really tough to get into right now. It's really competitive. But let's go back to Chapel Hill. And let's look at new listings real quick before we move to the next one. New listings are up 47%. Some of that's new construction feeding into that because new listings resale is up 37%. But regardless, that's a big jump. I mean, look at our peak last year. Our peak last year was May 2024, and we've blown past that. Our peak before that was May 19 or I was about to say May 1999. May 2022, we've blown past that. It wasn't, you have to go back all the way to April of 2021 to see a number as high as what we had in this March. So that's really good. That's really good to see that many listings hitting the market. All right, let's look at Durham. Durham's another interesting one. If I spell it right. All right, so homes for sale in Durham, 769. That is an increase of 52% from last year. It's crazy. Now, if you compare that to March of 2019, this is interesting. Durham is now basically at pre-pandemic levels when you're looking at March of 2019 compared to March of 2025. Because again, like inventory in our area doesn't tend to peak until this time, right? September, October, September, October, like that's when it peaks. And so we're still on the upward trend of this. It's not going to peak until later this year. And so when you're looking at this 2019, 783 homes for sale in March of 2019, and then 2025, 769 homes for sale. We're at pre-pandemic levels in Durham, which is really good. New listings hitting the market, we're up 16% compared to last year. All right, now what about competition in Durham? Competition, 98.7% is kind of what we're seeing. Now, if you look at resale, it's a little bit higher. It's almost 99% in Durham. So in general, people are getting homes in Durham for about 1% less than what the list price is. So it's a decently competitive market. And again, so house dependent, right? You're going to have houses in Durham that are going to be so hyper competitive, and there's going to be houses in Durham that aren't at the end of the day. So it's so house dependent. All right, let's look real quick at Fuquay, because Fuquay-Varina is a little bit different than some of the areas that we've looked at. Then we might look at one more after this. All right, so in Fuquay, if we're looking at homes for sale, let's go to all construction types. 354 homes are for sale. If you go back to pre-pandemic levels, let's look at March of 2019, 334. We're officially above pre-pandemic levels in Fuquay. And we've actually talked about this before. So if you watch these, this isn't necessarily a new thing that you're learning, but Fuquay is one of the areas that is officially above pre-pandemic levels when it comes to inventory. All right, new listings up 19%. We'll go back here. So this number, again, like we're not going to peak on inventory until September, October timeframe. So this number is going to continue to grow, and it's going to outpace what we see on this chart. So I think you can pretty much expect that, because that is the general trend. All right, what about competition in Fuquay? You see this, like if you were to draw a line straight through this, competition is decreasing in Fuquay right now because of inventory. It's all related, right? If inventory levels are healthy, competition is not as intense. So right now, you've got the average or the median buyer being able to get roughly 2% off of list price. So I mean, it's not like none of these numbers are crazy, right? Like competitive is 100%, non-competitive is roughly 98%. So but it matters because that's several $1,000s that you're getting the home less for. So at the end of the day, it does matter, but it's just not it's not like a competitive market is 100% a list price and a non-competitive market is 90% or 85%. We're not seeing that large of a discrepancy between competition and non-competition. So all right. So in general, Fuquay is an area from a competitive standpoint that's cooling down, and it's cooling down because of inventory levels. So, and again, like if you bought a home in Fuquay lately and you had to bid for it, it's so house dependent, right? That's just the reality of the market right now. So let's look at Wake Forest real quick, and we will be done with the local data. So Wake Forest is one that's interesting. If you don't like really dig into the numbers, I think you're going to kind of miss some of it. But Wake Forest inventory, let's make sure everything is good. All right, so Wake Forest inventory here. Hold on, let me make sure Wake. There we go. All right. So inventory levels in Wake Forest are also up 24%. Now, if you compare that to pre-pandemic levels, again, we're pretty far below that, right? 640 homes were for sale in Wake Forest in March of 2019. So we're like half of that right now. Now, if you look at new listings are actually down. This is where you got to kind of dig into that. Why are new listings down? New construction. That's why. Less new construction on the market in Wake Forest. New construction is down 74% in Wake Forest. If you look at resale, new listings are up. They're up 15%. So that's where you gotta kind of have to dig into that a little bit more. The resale market in Wake Forest is adding more new listings than they did last year. The new construction is way down compared to where it was last year. All right, so what about sellers? What are sellers getting, and what are buyers paying for homes in Wake Forest? So when you look at it, about 1% off is kind of the average of what folks are getting in Wake Forest. So if you're a buyer in Wake Forest, on average, you're getting a home for about 1% less than what it's listed for. So, but yeah, I find all of this really, really fascinating and good in a lot of ways. We're seeing inventory levels increasing in our region pretty substantially. Even in places like a Cary, right? Like going back to Cary, you've got let's just look at the resale side. Like, are we below pre-pandemic levels? Yes, we are. However, we're getting there, right? Like we're up 98% from where we were last year. And we're not like if you just look at resale here, which is what I'm looking at, 216 homes are for sale on the market today in Cary. And in March of 2019, 319 homes are for sale. So we're about 100 homes off, which is a lot. But the good news is we're working in that trajectory, I think. And the sooner, and this is why I get excited about this, because the sooner we're in a more balanced inventory market, the sooner the market kind of levels out, and I think creates a more level playing field for buyers. And a lot we were doing real estate in 2019, and sellers were still getting a decent amount for their property, but it wasn't a market that was just overheated, so to speak. So I think the quicker we can return to a market where inventory levels are healthy, competition is still good. Like there's not going to be a market where competition doesn't exist, right? Like if you have a great house in a great area that's priced well, it's probably going to be competitive, no matter what inventory levels are. And so I think that this isn't to avoid competition as much as it's just getting to a more level market. With mortgage rates where they are, home prices where they are, we need to be in a more level market than we have been the last several years, and we're getting there. And so that's really good news, and that's why I love looking at the data. And just March is a great month to look at the data. April is also a really good month. So I'm kind of excited for us to get to May, so I can look back at April data. But anyway, so that is a general look at the day. If you're anything like Cindy, you've probably have either clicked off or fallen asleep at this point. So I love it though. All right, talking about inventory, moving on to some local stories. We got 2 local stories, and then we'll wrap up. But Durham Durham City Council blocked a neighborhood that would have added 702 homes. It's on South Durham. It's near South Point Mall. I'll show you on the map here in a second by In My Homes. But basically, their concern was, they had a couple concerns. One, affordability. 2, infrastructure. I think there were some environmental concerns as well, but the one that I really wanted to focus on was infrastructure. So, and this is where it was located. So, kind of zoom out here. There's South Point here, Jordan Lake here. So, kind of on this southern side. This is like the Chapel Hill areas. This region is like right there on that Chapel Hill Durham border, and near the Jordan Lake area and South Point area. But infrastructure concerns, an area that I am probably the most concerned about when it comes to infrastructure would be East Durham. There's other areas, but East Durham is one of those areas where you drive on some of these little two lane roads, and you've got these massive developments going in off these 2-lane roads. And I'm like, how are these roads going to support the thousands of people that are going to move into these neighborhoods? And it's concerning. And so I think, I don't know, like, I'm not an expert on what went down on this vote. But one of their concerns was infrastructure concerns on that southern side. And that southern side is pretty similar to East Durham from the standpoint of there's not a lot of road systems down there that would connect, like especially a neighborhood of this size on that side of town. The road systems don't really exist to sustain that. So obviously, I think my position on growth is a positive thing. And if you live in the area, like, you should want the area to grow. But growth has to be managed in a way that doesn't cause issues that are avoidable. And one of those things you can do is add infrastructure ahead of some of these projects. So I'm sure this neighborhood is going to get improved or approved at some point by the city council. But hopefully they can come up with a plan to ease the traffic congestion that would be a result of that. So I think, hopefully in East Durham, there's some movement on some of that too. All right, last thing worth talking about tonight before we're out of time is a new restaurant in Durham is opening. It's a Rooftop restaurant. I say is opening. It has opened. It opened yesterday, actually. Today's the 10th. It opened on the 9th. At least according to this article, it said it planned to open on the 9th. The Lenny. So this is in the 555 Mangum building, which, if you've ever been to the Durham Bulls Stadium, there's kind of a building to its right that is a decently tall building. And this is going to be located on the top floor with views of the ball field and views of downtown Durham. And it looks really cool. So it opened yesterday. So if you want to go check out a restaurant in downtown Durham that has rooftop views of the city, this would be a really cool place to check out. It looks like it's open from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily. They've got brunch on the weekends, and looks like seafood they offer. So yeah, this looks like a really cool place. But I think the selling feature is, and this isn't like a great photo with kind of how blurry it is in the back. Let's see if there. Yeah, this isn't the best. I mean, it looks like a cool restaurant, but I think the selling feature is the view. The view's really cool for this one. So obviously you can see some of the new condos. This is the one city tower, and then this is the Novus over here, which is that new condo development going up in downtown Durham. So anyway, I thought this was really cool. I love like rooftop restaurants are really neat, in my opinion. So I thought this was pretty interesting. So all right, well that does it for tonight. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Again, make sure to put in the comments where you're joining from. If you have not already, drop us a question below as well. And we'll try to get that answered next week if you do have a question. And anyway, I hope y'all have a good week and see y'all next time. All right, bye y'all.